minutes after 8 o'clock. Let's bring him in. Film study professor Joe Fortunato. He's going to take us to film school. And we're going back in time with Alfred Hitchcock today. Good morning, my friend. You go ahead and take it from there.
Good morning, Ray. Good morning, everybody. And yes, we're going to start off September by celebrating the 60th anniversary of The Birds from the master of suspense himself, Alfred Hitchcock. It was released March 29th, 1963, and it stars Rod Taylor, Tippi Hedren, Jessica Tandy, Suzanne Pleshette. It was nominated for one Oscar for special effects. Not to pile on Alfred Hitchcock, but he famously has never won an Oscar, which is sort of a trivia question that gets asked sometimes. Mm-hmm. This was included among the AFI's list of top 100 most heart-pounding American movies, and it was based on a book or a short story called The Birds that was purchased originally for Alfred Hitchcock Presents, his TV show, and it kind of got shelved and eventually got made into a movie. There are no ending credits on this film, and the opening credits, the titles of The Birds, was just slowly pecked away by the passing crows, and so there's no music in the opening credits that makes it really, really creepy. And at the end, he sort of eschewed using the title "The End," which was pretty common at the time, because he just sort of wanted it open-ended and kind of scary and spooky, which I think he succeeded. Hitchcock doesn't really give deliberately any rational explanation for the behavior of the birds. He knew that he created much greater concern in the spectators just to instill fear. And like I said, they got rid of that ending so that there would be continued discomfort even after they left the film. Hitchcock was a master of promotion as well. And in London, anyway, at one of the premieres of the film, he also had speakers with, screeching birds as people exited the theater. So they would hear that and even get more scared as they left the theater. And kind of similar to Psycho, when he wouldn't let anybody in after the film started, and other kind of goofy stunts, if you want to call that. There were several endings that were considered for the film that didn't make it. One, which I kind of like, actually, was to show the Golden Gate Bridge completely covered by birds. I think that would have been pretty creepy. Casting-wise, Hitchcock briefly considered Cary Grant for the role of Mitch Brenner that eventually went to Rod Taylor. But he decided against using the expensive actor because he felt the birds and the Hitchcock name were the big attractions there, and he didn't want a big star like Cary Grant to overshadow. Tippi Hedren, or some other casting choices, Audrey Hepburn was considered for the role of Melanie Daniels, that went to Tippi Hedren. Hitchcock also considered Sean Connery for the role of Mitch Brenner, but he preferred to use him in his next film, Marnie, which he did. I lost my train of thought there. Tippi Hedren was actually hurt during the production. She was cut in the face by one of the birds in the shots, and allegedly, according to Hedren, she was the victim of harassment by Hitchcock, and sadly, that's kind of a reputation that Hitchcock had. And she had blood and injuries in the scene that appears real because they were, because she was really cut. And she says that Hitchcock sort of ignored it because she had refused his advances, and again, that's sort of sadly kind of legendary for his reputation.
Joe, when you look at this film, I could go on and on about this film, and I think you probably could too, but Tippi Hedren, that role of Melanie, even though you hate to see the birds attack and the creepiness and attacking a person, she was a character that most of us didn't like. So when it's happening to her, you're going, oh, the poor thing, and but she deserved it. She was mean to the birds, and the birds are sticking up for their buddy.
Well, Hitchcock didn't treat his actors super well, as I just told you that story. So that sort of bleeds onto the screen sometime. if he didn't want to create sympathy, he wouldn't. And you're absolutely right. Talking about the birds themselves, the movie has over 370 effect shots, which is quite a lot for those days. There was different kinds of birds used. There were hand puppets, mechanical, and a couple were trained live birds. And there was about $200,000, quite a bit of money, spent on creating mechanical birds for the film. And the majority of the rest of the birds then were real birds. And Hitchcock said that the seagulls were the most vicious and the ravens were the cleverest of the 3,000 plus birds that were trained for the movie.
Joe, was it a box office smash?
Yeah, it was did pretty well. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but Hitchcock's name always carried over. I will say this, that when the movie aired on television, this isn't necessarily box office numbers. In a few years later, in 1968, it was the highest rated movie shown on television up to that point. It was then broken a few years later by Love Story, but this was definitely a popular film with the audiences.
The Birds, the anniversary, released in 1963, an Alfred Hitchcock film that still today, every time I see it on, I've got to stop and watch. Great job, Joe. I always appreciate it, my friend. The Birds today. Have a great weekend, Joe. We'll get together again next week.
Thanks, Ray. See you next week.
You got it, my friend. Film study professor Joe Fortunato with us.